Hello bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to talk about all of my anticipated releases for the winter. I consider my winter to be December, January, and February. Typically, I post this video earlier at the beginning of the season or even before the season starts, and I'm doing this one a little bit late because NaNoWriMo kind of threw off all of my video scheduling. But it worked out just fine because there's only one December release, and it hasn't been released at the time of me filming this, although by the time I posted, I think it might have come out by then. Honestly, most of the releases that I'm excited about are coming out in January. There are a lot in January. I have a total of 14 books to talk to you guys about today. As a reminder, just because I'm excited about a release or looking forward to a book that's coming out, it doesn't mean that I'm going to read it right away. So this video is separate from my winter TBR, which will actually be the next video that I post after this one. These are just books that I'm looking forward to seeing what people say about them. Some of them, yes, I am planning to read, but most of them I'm not planning on picking up soon. They're just ones that I want to keep an eye on. Alright, since we have 14 books, I should probably get going. The one and only book that's coming out in December that I'm interested in is The Cursed Sea by Lauren DeStefano, and this book is being released on December 18th by Bowser and Bray. And this is the second book in the Glass Bear series, and from what I can tell, I think this is going to be a duology. I read the first book in the series about a year ago. I actually received an e-arc of it from like NetGalley or Edelweiss, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. I gave it 3 stars, and I was at the time planning on continuing on in the series. At this point, I'm a little bit ambivalent. I'm not like super excited about continuing it, but it is what I think is just a duology, so I feel like it would be really easy for me to just pick up the second book and finish it off. This is one that I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on and seeing what sort of feedback it gets before deciding if I'm going to pick it up or not. The next release I'm excited about is The Similars by Rebecca Hanover, and this is coming out on January 1st by Source Books Fire. The reason why I'm interested in this is because it has to do with clones. You guys know anything that has to do with genetics I am interested in, but also tend to tread warily because since I know so much about genetics, it's very easy for those books to go wrong. But it's a YA science fiction book set in the near future. The main character goes to this like boarding school or some sort of special school, and one day 6 clones show up at the school and they, I guess, form a clique called the Similars, and one of these clones is actually a clone of the main character's best friend who died over the summer, and so she has to deal with seeing his face every day even though it's not really her best friend. Because this is the first book in a series and it's a debut, I definitely won't be reading it right away, but I'm going to be keeping my eye on it and seeing what sort of feedback it gets. Next, I have The Girl King by Mimi Yu. This is coming out on January 8th by Bloomsbury YA. I have been hearing about this book for a really long time. It's one of those YA fantasies that is inspired by Asian mythology. There's a lot of those coming out recently and in the near future, and I am, of course, really excited about that. So this book is a YA fantasy about 2 sisters. One of them is the heir to the empire, and the other sister has always lived in her older sister's, I'm guessing older sister's, shadow. But then their father betrays them and names their male cousin as the heir instead. The sister who was supposed to be the heir goes on a mission to regain her throne, and the other one develops some sort of magic, and she might use that magic to help her sister gain the throne, or she might use it to secure the throne for herself. I love the sound of this. Not only is it an Asian-inspired fantasy, but it's about 2 sisters, and I love reading about sister relationships. And from what I can tell, it's a standalone. This one has already received some good buzz, even from people that I know on Goodreads, so I'm really excited about this one. The next book that I'm looking forward to is called The Paragon Hotel by Lindsay Fay. This is a historical fiction set in 1921, so set in the 20s. And I honestly don't know much about it, but the reason why this one is on my list is because of the author, Lindsay Fay. Lindsay Fay was also the author of Jane Steele, which was a huge hit on BookTube last year. I have yet to read it, but just because of the kind of buzz that Jane Steele got, when I saw that the same author was coming out with a new book, I put this on my anticipated list. The next book that I'm excited about is Stain by A.G. Howard, and this is coming out on January 15th from Abrams/Amulet Books. I have read 2 books by A.G. Howard before. I read the first 2 books in the Splintered series. It's a trilogy. And the Splintered series is a Alice in Wonderland retelling. And I thought it was really creative and different. I really enjoyed it, but I haven't picked up the 3rd book yet, and I'm kind of waffling on if I'm going to actually finish that trilogy out or not. Either way, I really liked A.G. Howard's writing style. She has had a book come out since then that was like a Phantom of the Opera retelling that I didn't pick up, but I considered. And she also, I think, came out with some new adult books that I also haven't read. Anyways, I'm excited about Stain because it's a retelling of The Princess and the Pea. That's just a fairy tale that I haven't seen like retellings of before, so it caught my eye and I'm very intrigued by it. And it also appears to be a standalone, which is good for me. Next, I have Dragon Pearl by Yoon-Ha Lee, and this is coming out on January 15th by Rick Riordan Presents. So if the author's name sounds familiar, that's because this is the author of the Nine Fox Gambit series, which I haven't read, but I've heard great things about. This is also a science fiction book, however, it's middle grade. And I know I haven't read much middle grade since I started my channel, but I actually really love middle grade, and I'm hoping that 2019 I can read more middle grade than I have been because I haven't been reading any. It looks like this is based on Korean mythology, which is awesome because I'm half Korean. From the description, it sounds like this is a space opera, but it also sounds like there's magic in this book, which science fiction with magic sounds amazing. Next, I have The Cold is in Her Bones by Peternell van Arsdale. And this book is coming out on January 22nd by Margaret K. McElderberry Books, which is an imprint or publisher that I'm not super familiar with. This one definitely is kind of like a cover, not a cover buy because I didn't buy it, but I'm anticipating it partially because of how beautiful the cover is. It's one of those illustrated covers. I don't usually like girls or people's faces on the covers of books, but this one is done really tastefully. This is a YA fantasy and is another retelling. I heard a little bit of buzz about this on Twitter recently, and it sounds like this is a Medusa retelling, which sounds fascinating. Still not done with the January new releases. Like I said, there are a lot of them. Next, I have Imprison the Sky by A.C. Gauguin, and this is the 2nd book in the Elemente series. And this book is coming out on January 22nd from Bloomsbury YA. I read the first book in the series about a year ago, and I really enjoyed that. I gave it 4 stars. This is a fantasy that has magic in it, but what I remember from the first book is that it also had a lot of mature content and mature themes. Not necessarily like sexually explicit stuff, but the main character was forced into a marriage to protect her people. It just had some dark themes in it that I felt were more appropriate for like an older YA audience, maybe even like a new adult audience, but I really enjoyed it. I loved the themes that it explored, and so I'm definitely looking forward to the sequel. Next, I have The Wolf in the Whale by Jordana Max Brodsky, and this book is coming out on January 29th by Red Hook. I heard about this book from Jess Reads Books. She loved this book. I'm pretty sure she did a review, and I will link it for you down in the description in case you want to check it out. But this is a historical fiction sort of fantasy. It's set in North America in 1000 AD, so a long time ago, which is such an interesting time period and setting that I don't read very often. So that's the first thing that got me excited about this book. I know that it's about a young Inuit shaman, and I remember Jess saying that religion played a really big part, like the gods that these people believed in. Jess is also from Alaska, and so she had a lot of really good insight on like the Inuit culture, and from what I remember, she thought it was really well done. And all of that put together was enough for me to be excited about this book. The next book that I'm going to talk about is probably my most anticipated out of this whole list, and that's going to be King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo, which is the first book in the Nikolai duology. And this is coming out on January 29th by Imprint. Nikolai is like my favorite character from all of the Grishaverse, so I'm super excited that he's getting his own duology, and I'm definitely going to be reading this as soon as I can get my hands on it. I haven't even read the synopsis. I don't care what the synopsis is, I want to read it. Next, I have The Deceivers by Kristen Simmons, and it looks like this is the first book in the Valhalla Academy series. This book is coming out in February. We finally moved on to February. February 5th by Tortine. I've read one Kristen Simmons book before and I really loved it. I read her book The Glass Arrow, which is like a YA dystopian, and it was fantastic. And I've been meaning to read more Kristen Simmons since then, but of course I haven't. This one is a YA fantasy, and it's about a group of kids that are going to a school for aspiring con artists. I have discovered that I really like stories about con artists. One of my favorite shows is Sneaky Pete, which I believe is on Amazon, but it's about a con artist. So the tagline for this is Pretty Little Liars meets Ocean's 11 in this intrigue-filled contemporary drama from acclaimed author Kristen Simmons. I thought this was a fantasy. It's listed as fantasy like on Goodreads, just by how people shelf it, but this might not actually be a fantasy. I guess I'll have to find out later. However, because it is the first in a series, I probably won't be reading this soon, but I will definitely be keeping an eye on it and seeing what sort of feedback it gets. The last 3 books I have to talk about are actually all adult books for once. The next one I have is The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Jenoff. This book is coming out on February 5th by Park Row. So this author is a established historical fiction author. She had a bestseller, The Orphan's Tale, previously, which I haven't read. But this one is about a woman who finds a suitcase that looks like it belonged to a group of women spies during World War II. I love books set during the World War II era, and unraveling a mystery involving women who were secret spies sounds fascinating, and so I am definitely interested in this one. Next, I have The Huntress by Kate Quinn. This is coming out on February 26th by William Morrow. This is also an adult historical fiction, and Kate Quinn is an established historical fiction author that I've never read before but have heard of. This author wrote The Alice Network recently, which was really popular. All I know about this is that it's set during the World War II era, but I heard April from Getting Hygge with It talk about it, and she made it sound really interesting, so I'm going to be keeping my eye out on this one. And now we're on to my last book. The last book that I'm going to talk about is The Priority of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. This is coming out on February 26th from Bloomsbury Publishing. I have yet to read any Samantha Shannon. I know The Bone Season is like a really popular series that she wrote, and the main reason I haven't read it is because it's an unfinished series, and I'm currently trying to finish up series that I'm already reading and not starting new ones. But this is going to be her newest release. It's an adult fantasy. It's huge. It's 848 pages. It sounds fascinating. Goodreads says, from the international best-selling author of The Bone Season, a trailblazing, epic high fantasy about a world on the brink of war with dragons and the women who must lead the fight to save it. A world divided, a queendom without an heir, and an ancient enemy awakens. That sounds fascinating. Going to war with dragons, and on top of that, there's a queendom. I'm sold, and I definitely want to read this. But this one, as of right now, is a standalone. She has said that she would be interested in writing more books in the series. I'm glad that, as of right now, it's just a standalone, because if it was the start of a series, I probably would put off reading it. But since this is currently a standalone, I plan to read this sometime next year. Alright guys, those are all 14 books that are coming out in the next 3 months that I am super excited about. Let me know if you guys are anticipating any of these books, or if I've introduced you to some new books that you're excited about. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like bookish content. I post 1 to 2 times a week. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye. One at the end of December, and then January and February, bleh. These are just books that some of these books, I read the first book in the series, because, and it also looks to be a standalone, which helps because, and it also, bye.